Hopefully spring has sprung weather-wise wherever you may be. Regardless, spring is about to spring in Miami when it comes to football for the University of Miami. We will discuss and everything else that you would like to discuss, folks. You ultimately produce the show. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. Canes Live right here at the Voice of College Football with Mr. Cam Underwood right next to me. State of the U. Check it out for your Miami football needs. Hey, Cam.
Mark, what's going on? Everybody, what's going on? Good to see you. Glad to be here. All of that great stuff on a Wednesday evening. So, yeah, I'm good. You're good. We're all good.
If you've noticed some extra content here on the channel, you can thank Cam.
Told you.
If you're unaware, dive in. Give it a look. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. So we did a couple things. I know that, Mark and I have been talking about this behind the scenes. I know some of you guys have been talking to me about like, hey, I know there's Wednesday, but, basically, what are your thoughts on some of these other things? And like, hey, I'm not taking away from anybody who does anything else. I watch, Canes Insight Daily. I watch, I forget the name of the podcast I used to do that Dono now does daily. Like, I see that there's other guys, other people creating a bunch of stuff. And I've always been big on creating the content that's in your head. I've done it on the website and now doing it over here. So, I have a solo video, sometimes bring on some friends. I brought my boy Fred, who calls me all the time, who I mention on here on this show sometimes. So he had some time. So we talked about some combine stuff and whatnot. Really was upset by that. And we're going to dig into this because did 8 minutes on a player at the combine who's actually not going to be participating at the combine. So I was a little bit upset about that. But, hey, be sure that you guys check it out. I saw the comments for the over-under video were, on and popping and everything. So, yeah, dive into that, support that and everything. I really appreciate it. I know, hey, man, I'm just going to talk my stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Pull up.
It will be worth the watch, as always.
Yeah, man.
All right. Spring practice brings to mind, of course, improvement. Fundamentals, techniques, all those good things. Players need to get better. They give the time to hone their craft without the pressure of a game forthcoming. When you look at Miami's personnel needs, the roster composition, where would you like to see this team 6 weeks from now in regards to, okay, I feel better because this was accomplished, or we didn't hear too much of that?
Number one, the thing that I always start with, no injuries. Like, I need the blue chip talent that's on all over this roster to be healthy or get healthy. Now, there's going to be some guys who are held out because they had procedures or injuries previously. Somebody like a Carson Beck, who Mario Cristobal, when interviewed on campus yesterday, said could start throwing in a couple of weeks. That's early side work, guys. That's not all of the number one reps in spring. But he's on the pace where, yeah, he can start probably on track to start throwing in the next couple of weeks. That's outstanding. Charles Brantley, I believe, is out for spring. He had a little procedure. I know CJ Daniels out for spring, still rehabbing the heel that bothered him at LSU. Jadis Richards still rehabbing his knee injury from the Duke game late last season. This is the time for that kind of stuff. So, number one, I don't want any extra injuries. Take the time to get better. And then really I need to see and hear about guys taking steps forward. I would feel in a much better position as a team if I hear insert quarterback here. My personal preference would be Luke Nickel, but I'm open to any of them. I would like to hear that guys are taking steps forward. I would like to see wide receivers asserting themselves and really staking claim to those top 3 to 5 slots in the wide receiver rotation. Well, 3 to 4 because CJ Daniels is going to be in that rotation as well. And defense, like we're really rebuilding an entire team. But to the point of the question, I would really, really, really love to hear that the defensive line is taking a big step forward, because that was supposed to be the foundational unit of last year's defense, and they were average at best. Now, I know that there were guys who were battling injury and everything. Ruben Bain, the entire season, basically was playing, 60%. But that really exposed the issues in the secondary, which we knew were there to be exposed, and it was just magnified. So I need the defensive line to take some steps forward. So those would be the top of my brain of things that I would need to see. And then through the development of the players on the roster, having a better idea of what's needed in the spring portal. An extra quarterback for depth, it might not be needed if guys take a step forward. I might feel more comfortable with it. An extra wide receiver might not be needed if guys look like they're taking steps forward, but we're basically all freshmen and sophomores, save CJ Daniels and Ray Joseph. So those are just some of my thoughts at the beginning. But yeah, really taking the time to work and develop technique. 3 days upcoming in this next week, and then a week off for spring break, and then going to hit the back half or the back 80% of spring practice.
Falconer TRX, he's here, he's in the building, and therefore we've officially started a show. Thank you for that, sir.
My guy.
When you talk about the defense needing to be built from the ground up to a certain extent,
yeah,
that's obviously largely due to a new defensive coordinator. From a personnel standpoint, what are the starters lost, the impact players, you start 11 guys, you probably have 15 to 18 that you would consider to be key pieces in a defense. That's largely been overhauled.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, I released my spring preview on offense today on stateofview.com. Defense I wrote today and is up tomorrow. So this all this stuff you can definitely check out there. But in terms of like turnover on the roster, it's minimal up front. You graduate a lot of guys along the defensive line. So your Tyler Behrens, your Simeon Barrows, CJ Clark, Marley Cook, Anthony Campbell, and a couple of guys, you're like, who? They were older transfer guys who were brought in for depth, but a lot of those are at defensive tackle as opposed to end. But you flip that, but you have a lot of blue chip talent there. So it's mostly everybody back. But again, are you healthy? And what are you doing from a snap allocation standpoint at each position? You have guys like Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain who can play equally inside and out. What are you doing there with that? What are you doing? A Justin Scott, former 5-star. Are you taking a step forward? Marquise Lightfoot, everybody in the building is like, yo, he's Jason Taylor Part 2. This is an All-American. Hayden Lowe, top 15 player, ends up in the rankings of this current class, the same high school as Kayvon Thibodeau, and made favorable comparisons to Kayvon Thibodeau, who played at Oregon and was a top 5 draft pick for Mario Cristobal. Does he come on campus and light the world on fire? And 2 years after Ruben Bain, he's a nailed-on starter outside. I don't know, but there's a lot of talent there. At linebacker, you lose Kiko Mawinoa, who's going to be at the combine and everything, but Popo Aguirre was the number 1 off the bench, right, last year, number 32 at linebacker. He slides in, starts next to Wesley Basaint, who's in his second and a half, like third year starting, right? Foundational guy. And then you got a lot of athletic dudes at linebacker. I want to see how they develop. Cameron Bobby Pruitt, Bobby Washington in that group. You got Adarius Hayes. You got Kellen Wiley in this current class. You got plenty of big athletic dudes, which if you remember years ago, I said, you need to flip that. You need to get more athletic at linebacker. Miami is more athletic at linebacker now. But what do those guys do? Does Wesley Basaint go from starter to star, right? That's a thing that I want to see. And in the secondary, it's a hockey line change. You depart from the roster a large number of guys. I don't necessarily think that some of them are losses, but Dione Hill, out of here. Jaden Harris, out of here. Miles Munyung, who was a walk-on turned scholarship player, but he never played because he was a walk-on, and he goes to Coastal Carolina. Out of here. You see Robbie Washington, the Washington twin of Bobby, the linebacker, who was a receiver, couldn't hack it at receiver. They put him at corner, and then he said, cool, bye. And he transferred to go play offense again. You see so many dudes leaving from the secondary, but then you add Charles Brantley III. You add a Zachariah Poyser, who was a freshman All-American. You add Emmanuel Carnley from Arizona. You add Ethan O'Connor from Washington State, right? You add all these dudes and the recruits on top of that at both positions, right? Dylan Day, who was incredible on specials last year. Markeith Williams, who was a blue chip. There's so many new faces in the secondary, and not even say the probably most talented one, which is Zaquan Patterson, right? So, yeah, it's all new faces, a complete line change. Oh, excuse me, and our incumbent freshman All-American proprietarily from the University of Miami, Romanis O.J. Frederick Jr. So, look, you got two freshman All-American coming back, one from Miami, one from Jacksonville State, who's a native Floridian coming home, right? And then all these other dudes. That's where I don't know how it's going to shake out, right? And I know, like I said, Jadis Richard, he's out for spring because he's still injured because he had a nasty injury at the end of the year. Apparently, Amari Wallace, with that compound fracture on the practice field at Miramar High School when he was before his senior year at Miami Central, had a really nasty compound fracture, but it was just bone apparently, which if you're going to have that happen is the best case scenario. So he's a guy who can step in. Jabari Antoine, Chris Ewald, Bryce Fitzgerald. There's so many new names in the secondary, and it needed to be because last year's secondary was atrocious. So you're going to see guys figuring it out, right? Damari Brown coming back. Is he a corner, or is he somebody like Sheldrick Redwine, who started for 2 years at corner and then transitioned to safety for his junior and senior year in college and then safety in the league? I don't know, but there are a lot of guys with a lot of talent, and even dudes that we brought in from a lot of different places who played a lot of snaps, put them on the practice field and let them work it out. But, yeah, that's really where it's going to be. You're going to figure it out on the fly. I would personally like the law firm of Patterson and Poyser to be your starters at safety and then figure out the rest around that. But in the end, I want the best players to play. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to y'all and say I don't have a preference. I do have a preference. I follow the recruiting very strongly. I've seen guys come up through the ranks. I have my ideas of who I would like to see be there, but let them go and let them earn it. And then, like Mr. AG says, yeah, I'm curious to see what else we're going to add after the spring portal, because once you've seen these guys on the field, you'll have a pretty good idea of who's ready for prime time and who's not. And when you know who's ready for prime time, then you can effectively and hopefully appropriately address any gaps that exist on the roster.
So a couple points off of that. One would be to your point, first and foremost, running back Trey Hall of Ole Miss was reported out for the entire spring, most likely the entire season. So this is a guy who is probably in their top 3 rotation, and he misses the entire spring and most likely the entire season. So yes, stay healthy, keep everybody healthy through the entirety of the spring. Point number 2 that's brought up by Mr. HD and a few others here in regards to the portal. So, like most things, while you may have an observation of the way things run or the way things work, like, for example, the transfer portal, you got to kind of keep up with the times. And is that being, is that evolving? Is it changing? Or things happening? So it's my thought, and based on observation over the last few years, that in the spring portal, what you're mostly going to get is depth pieces, because those guys, they're not leaving their teams during spring because, they're the best players aren't leaving their teams in the spring. However, we saw Tennessee's best cornerback because of financial considerations. Now that might be a more of a rare case that may become less of a rare case in the future, him taking off in the spring. But in terms of the portal being more of a supplement in the spring, more of let's go get real game changers in the first cycle.
Yeah, I think that lines up. And yeah, I mean, look, a gap is still a gap. So if you're like, I have a starter, but I have no viable backup option, that's a hole that you can plug in the spring. You know, getting somebody who their presence on the roster raises the floor of the position, as it were, as opposed to taking the ceiling, really up. To Brandon Tix's point that I put up on the screen here, DE position is deep, but we know Bane and Mesdors will be the starters. I'm not so sure, my friend. And let me clarify that. I'm not saying that they're not going to be the starters. I'm not sure that they're going to be the starters both at defensive end. We've already seen Akeem Mesidor start inside multiple games last year. We've seen Ruben Bain flex inside a lot. And I mean, I know that he is very good off the edge, but he's also stockily built and can be a world destroyer inside. So I agree with you partly that, yeah, they probably will both be starters. I do not necessarily agree with you that they will be the defensive end starters.
Folks, you can enjoy the show on a number of social media platforms, including Twitter/X. However, you can get into the conversation if you join us here on YouTube and make some new friends there in the chat and talk Miami football. Leave your comments and questions right here. I know that you posted at least one video, because I caught a good, 6, 8, 10 minutes of these videos. But with your buddy concerning the NFL Combine, Miami is how many players? How many showed up in Indianapolis?
So there's 10 on the list. We do know that Elijah Arroyo, the star tight end, he got a little bit of a knee ding in the Senior Bowl, so he will not be participating in on-field drills. That is the big one. And like that's the one that we spent the most time talking about, because he's having this meteoric rise through the ranks of the pre-draft process, where people are even linking him to Kansas City at number 31, saying he's a first-round pick. Have him in for a year. Travis Kelce's already come out on this podcast and said that he's going to come back for another year. Have Arroyo learn from Kelce as he's leaving out, and then you have a replacement ready-made. But if you're not going to go and run and do all those things, you're not participating in on-field drills, I think that stalls his momentum slightly. From a narrative standpoint, it will be interesting to see what teams do with that information and how, when he performs at the Miami Pro Day, what that does for him. And then the other one that is uncertain at this point is Cam Ward. I believe that he is there in Indianapolis. I think that quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers arrived today, but they're not scheduled to be on-field drill or do their on-field drills until Saturday at 1 on NFL Network. And as of yesterday, at least, through Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, it was reported that Cam Ward is undecided if he will be participating in at what level. So definitely mulling his options relative to on-field drills and whatnot. If he decides to run, if he decides to throw, what he decides to do. So that's really the big storyline overall. We've already seen that Shedeur Sanders, who's most people's number 2 and some people number 1 over Cam Ward, idiots, has said that he is not participating at all at the Combine. And that's fine if that's the decision that he makes. I believe Cam Ward should make the decision that he wants to make for him in a vacuum, regardless of what anybody else does. Because especially when you are the big dog, everybody is taking their cadence from you. So, a lion does not concern itself with the opinion of sheep. So if he wants to go Shedeur, that is, and sit out, they ain't got nothing to do with the price of tea in China. You know what I mean? I'm going to do what I'm going to do, whether that's perform or don't. But that's really the biggest storyline, not just for Miami overall. You're talking about the potential number 1 overall pick guys who 48 hours less than from the time of on-field drills is at least outwardly still undecided. So, that will be interesting to see what happens. Andres Borregales had his on-field workout today. I was getting conflicting information when kickers worked out, as I was preparing my stuff, but I saw Dane Brugler, I believe, put up the schedule for the week, and that was confirmed that kickers kicked today. So I know that he had met with Borregales, that is, of like 8 teams from when he was at the Shrine Bowl, and did very, very well, including my Detroit Lions. So met with those teams then, and has continued to meet with other teams, through this process in Indianapolis. Yeah. And there's a preview piece up on stateofview.com for the combine where I listed out who performs on what day. And I wrote a very, very, very nice narrative because, I pre-write these things, guys. Like, they post at 9 a.m. in the morning, but like I wrote them the day or 2 or 3 before. Like, I already got stuff for, next week, or whatever that's in there. And I had to go in after I read Craig T. Smith's Monday Musings. And it was like, Elijah Arroyo's not going to participate. And I'm like, yo, hold on, what? Like, I was, otherwise occupied on Monday afternoon, and then I saw that. So go and check that out. But at least 8 dudes pretty much confirmed. You saw Tyler Barron and Kiko Mawinoa were at the podium doing interviews and things with the collection of media people today, extolling the glories of the University of Miami, and it helped them through their growth as people and players. And then we'll see the rest as we move forward. But yeah, the main storyline is, will he or won't he relative to Cam Ward? I don't know. Tune in and find out.
So step out of your green and orange
Okay.
and green. And why is Cam Ward the clearly better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders?
I mean, he just does everything better. And the floor is higher. The ceiling is way higher. He's a better athlete, a stronger arm, a higher performer. It just, like, there's really no comparison, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if you're talking about Incarnate Word, if you're talking about Washington State, if you're talking about the University of Miami, at every step along the way, Cam Ward has been the better player, has had the higher growth and the higher performance. Like, there really is no comparison. This is like, I think because Shedeur Sanders is Deion Sanders' son, that has given him a level of status in the conversation that I believe is a little bit inflated. He's objectively the better player. Like, there is not a thing that Shedeur Sanders does that Cam Ward cannot do. However, there are plenty of things in the inverse that Cam Ward can do and has done that Shedeur cannot. That throw at Florida, the one that he did again at Louisville, in the back of the end zone, running to his left, sticking his foot in the ground, flipping his hips, and driving that ball. Shedeur Sanders ain't got that in the bag, bro. He don't got it. It's not shade. It's just a fact. Some people have stronger arms than others. I'm also not saying that Cam Ward has a Josh Allen type arm, because he doesn't. But in comparison of those two, Cam Ward is clearly the better player. It's mind-boggling to me that anybody can look at those two and think that they're comparable. They are not.
And if anyone's trying to interpret my question in any certain way, I'm not leaning in any direction. I was just curious as to the emphatic statement in one direction, because for me, I don't really have a comparison. I know who I believe are better college players, but sometimes their NFL portfolio, their projection does not fall in line with what we saw in college.
Fair.
And that's often the case. So I didn't know who projected to be. I knew that Ward was generally on the board before Sanders by most, but that it was a conversation out there.
It is, and it is because I believe people are forcing it. It really, like, if you really look at it, and I mean, even if you look back at Washington State, Cam Ward, the only thing that would have kept it close when he was at Washington State were the turnovers, which he had fewer than half of, I believe, at Miami this year, of the previous number. So there you go. So you see positive growth and development in the one area that would have depressed the value to make it a closer conversation. You know what I mean? So yeah, I just think I don't think that it's close. It's really not. And I mean, like, even if you're going back to this time last year and heading into spring, right, saying for the 2024 season, Colorado offers Shedeur Sanders for Cam Ward straight up. I say thank you and no thank you, and I hang up the phone. I am not making that trade. And if any coach other than his father was the coach in Colorado, they are running to the podium, calling it and saying, trade. Give me Cam Ward. Give me that. Any other, I mean, it's just, no, I don't. Yeah, I just don't think that it's close. I really don't.
Falconer jumping in on this one. A score for the Miami beatdown of Florida this year.
Miami more than Florida by at least 1 point. That's what it needs to be for a win. That's what I need it to be for my Spirit. Just like 2013 with Al Golden when they had that holding penalty in the runoff or the whatever it was at the end of the game. And he said, hey, let's go. I don't care what the score is. Hey, give me, nope, I don't decline the penalty. What? Hey, I'm running over here, shaking your hand. Cool, Jim McElwain, appreciate you. I'm running out of here like a thief in the night. I don't care. As long as at the end of the day, it's Miami's number greater than Florida's number by 1 or a million, that's what it needs to be.
You are expecting a much better football game.
I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying it needs to be a Miami victory. But logically, I believe it will be I think it'll be a better game. They have taken a step forward from where they were, especially at the beginning of last year. And at least on offense, Miami will have taken a step back. I don't know to what measure, and also who knows what the defense will look like. But the defense is pretty dominant up there in Gainesville, my guy. So, yeah, I think that it might be a little bit of a closer contest because, yeah, we blew them the hell out, and that was, we should have had, mid 50s to 60 something points. We left 20 something points on the field. It was crazy. So it was even worse than 41-17 made it look like. So yeah, I think it'll be a little bit closer, but I need it to be Miami greater than the University of Florida's point total on the scoreboard at the end of 60 minutes.
That dude Rod has let us know a few things here. He's here. He's a little bit late, but he's going to hit that rewind so he can watch the entire show. So always keep that in mind, everyone, that if you jump in and you're like, oh, I just caught the last 10 minutes. Okay, well, we'll see you next week. No. You go back to the beginning of the show. You can watch the entire deal at any point. So maybe you did jump in 15, 20 minutes late, but you don't want to rewind right now. Hey, that's cool too. You stay with us live. Then at the end of the live broadcast, you go on back and you catch what you miss. And again, we appreciate that dude, Rod, letting everyone know he's hit the like button. So you should do likewise.
Absolutely. Going backwards really quickly, I saw Sean said that he thought that Miami picked up some starters in the spring portal last year. Damien Martinez, Tyler Barron, maybe Simeon Barrow. Damien Martinez, yes. The other ones, we weren't necessarily counting on them to start. We got depth guys. Like you figured Simeon Barrow coming down from Michigan State, he can be in the 2 deep. Tyler Barron, because you had Mesidor, you had Bain, you had, guys, you figure, okay, he'll be in the rotation. But then through the situations and circumstances of the year, they did eventually become starters. So I say I'll give you Damien Martinez, where we intentionally went and got someone who fit as the starter on the team. I think that we got good, solid veterans who ended up working their way into becoming starters, but it was not necessarily our intent to bring them in to start. So maybe I am splitting hairs that I no longer have with that, but just wanted to bring that up. But it is a good point that you did make, that it is possible to bring in guys who do end up starting in the spring portal. So, shout out to you with that. And yeah, great comment.
Not used to Cam having control of the board here.
Yeah. Sorry.
So Cam and I have been doing this forever. See the 416 next to the show name? 416.
Sheesh.
90% of those are Cam's.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of live streaming with Cam. And just to let you know, behind the scenes, the inside baseball kind of deal is that I control the graphics. It's my StreamYard, my channel. However, Cam has so graciously accepted our invitation to take hold of this channel, producing the content that he did this week. So you're going to see a whole lot more of Cam. And by way of also that he's got access to the StreamYard, so he can pop the comments and questions on the screen as well. So that's cool.
Yeah. And I mean, if this is news to you guys, because I see that, the number of live viewers is going up. I am doing more on this channel. Had a solo video, had a couple videos with my boy Fred, and we'll, be talking more frequent, or, creating more content frequently on there. So 7 p.m. on Wednesday is a great place, but there is even more coming your way. So be sure that you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because it might be Tuesday at 2. It might be Thursday at 1 when something hits there, and you don't want to miss it. So be sure that you lock in.
Oh, you can see that little number up in the top left corner, the live number now.
I can.
287, folks. We would love to have all of you on YouTube. That's a total viewer live count that used to be just here on YouTube, but we've been simulcasting on Twitter as well. Don't know what the breakdown is. I'd have to get on my phone, which I get curious from time to time, and I will do that just to see, how many are on YouTube versus Twitter right now. But we're pressing 300. So you've got family and friends out there, folks. You got social media acquaintances. Let them know that we're here tonight. And again, every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, the two of us, but a lot of bonus content, a lot of possibilities for live streaming based on breaking news and so forth, and Cam's availability. So a lot to dig in on. So again, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell for the notifications. All right. Also keep in mind this time of year, it's a good time to get your comments and questions in, because other times of the year, our plate's a little more full, and we've got plenty to talk about. So the comments and questions are always welcome, but especially during these gaps in content. One thing we've been doing over the last couple of weeks is we've been looking back on past recruiting classes, and we will do so again. We've looked at 2023 and 22. So if you've missed those, please check them out. That takes us back to 2021.
Well, before we get there, pause real quick. I see a couple of comments from Juan Manuel. Appreciate you being in here. It has been announced that ahead of spring practice, which, if you didn't know, starts on Monday, but ahead of spring practice on tomorrow, as we're recording on Wednesday evening, on Thursday, there will be a press conference at the University of Miami for all of the newly hired coaches, that being defensive pass game coordinator and defensive backs coach Zach Etheridge, defensive tackles coach and Miami Hurricanes alum Damian Lewis, and you got it, Will Harris, defensive backs coach from the University of Florida and other places, who is on staff at Miami. Those three gentlemen will have their introductory pressers tomorrow. So to the point of Juan Manuel, it appears that Will Harris and Kevin Beard are staying in Coral Gables. Where is the correction from that certain content creator from Gainesville? I don't know. And I told you I don't trust that person as far as I can throw them. And well, yeah. So, and again, I even have heard that, Will Harris might potentially leave for an NFL job if the right opportunity came along down the pipe. But going into spring practice and on tomorrow, February the 27th, those coaches, including Will Harris, will have their introductory press conference at the University of Miami. So I just wanted to put that out there. We do have a full staff heading into spring practice and everything. So for, Mario Cristobal loves to play things close to the vest and announce what he wants to announce, when he wants to announce it, how he wants to announce it. But the fact that they have scheduled that for tomorrow, I believe, tells the story. So, and at least for now, can situations and circumstances change? Yes. Could there be an NFL team who decides in what spring practice goes 6 weeks? Could they pull up in 7 weeks and say, hey, we really want you and we're going to pay you a crap load times 5, and you're making a crap load at Miami, but we're going to, hit you with a multiple on top of that. He could go for that. But I just wanted to put that all out there and everything, especially since you guys brought it up. And the other one from Judge Bush, I guess. Let's say hypothetically, and this is the last one before we get into the 2021 recruiting class breakdown and everything. Let's say hypothetically Beck isn't ready to roll week 1. Who do you think Miami puts out there at quarterback? Who do I think it would be? Emory Williams. Who do I want it to be? Luke Nickel. I get that that's a little aggressive for a true freshman at home against Notre Dame in the opener on Sunday night of Labor Day weekend. I've always been of the mentality and thought that Emory Williams is a program depth guy who maybe in year 3, 4, or 5, probably 4 or 5, might contend for playing meaningful snaps, but anytime before that is a little bit out of his depth. And I believe that we've seen that, and my thought on that has been validated. So, but he is the most veteran, non-Carson Beck option. So if Carson Beck were not ready for the opener, I would fully expect it to be Emory Williams or that additional transfer at quarterback that Miami gets in the spring portal. That would be my answer.
As I was setting up for the rundown of the 2021 class, which would have been Manny Diaz's final class after 7-5 that year.
Yep.
I've got this question because this was the Tyler Van Dyke year where he ripped off like 8 consecutive games, like 350 per game, 3 or 4 touchdowns every game. That was the year, right? 2021.
That was their freshman year, of this class. So the year before that was De'Aaron King in the COVID year.
Yes. So this was the season, where Tyler
so these
Van
were true
Dyke
freshmen during the Tyler Van Dyke season, correct?
Stepped into the lineup about week 3 or 4 and then ripped off that great stretch of games. They finished 7-5. So my question is, they went 7-5. Why didn't they go to a bowl game? Did they turn it down?
In 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Wasn't there like a COVID outbreak or something where they didn't have enough players?
Oh, yeah, there were. Yeah, I was thinking just because it wasn't the pandemic year in which, there were all sorts of crazy scenarios that those were still going on the next year as well. There were a lot of teams that opted out or couldn't play. And
I just Googled it really quickly up on State of the U where clearly, I put that, but there was an outbreak of COVID. So most of the players affected were offensive linemen and defensive backs. Players had been working out individually, but they did not have enough players to field a team to compete for in the bowl game at the end of the 21 season, and so that's why they didn't go. It was going to be the Tony the Tiger Bowl against Washington State and Cam Ward.
That's right.
But actually, no, that wasn't Cam Ward. That was before Cam Ward. But still, they were going to have a COVID outbreak. Didn't have enough players, especially along the line. So Miami, we did have to withdraw from that. That's why.
All right. I recall that now. There's the 21 class, 11th ranked in the nation with 23 total. Up top, Leonard Taylor.
Leonard Taylor, 5-star. Everybody's All-American. Top 5 player in the class. Number 1 at his position. Or number 3 his position. Number 1, state of Florida. I mean, that's a win in terms of recruiting. In terms of impact at Miami, you would have liked it to have been more consistent. He flashed excellence. He would go on these 2 and 3 play runs of being unblockable, being just the destroyer of worlds, and then disappearing for, the rest of the game. He definitely was not one of the 5 stars that gets drafted in the first round. He is making a name for himself in the NFL with the New York Jets as a either late pick or undrafted free agent, but has made that roster and has been rotating in. So that's a guy. I think you cannot get a local 5-star player, especially at defensive tackle, which you usually don't have in Florida. You cannot get him in a recruiting class and call that a loss. It wasn't the massive win that we hoped it would have been, but he was a solid starter for a couple of years, made some plays, honorable mention, all ACC, I believe, at one point. So he's kind of like Andrew Wiggins in the NBA, right? Andrew Wiggins was the #1 overall draft pick in the NBA. He's not that guy, but it's like a solid starter, an all-star, and like a valuable player on a championship team. He can play that role. He can do certain things. He's just not going to shoulder the entire load of the responsibility. And I think that Leonard Taylor was similar to that. But I mean, yeah, but to get a workman-like performance from somebody who comes in with 100 recruiting grade, a top 5 player in that class, is underwhelming. So it was a win that we got him, but it wasn't. Yeah, the high note, it didn't hit the levels that we thought it could or should have.
Where is he now?
New York Jets. On to James Williams from American Heritage, the other 5-star in this class. So that's a win, especially when everybody in America was recruiting this kid. 6'5", 218 coming out of high school, and he was that big, had been since his sophomore year. I've said it many a time. Many people opined that he was going to outgrow that position and move to linebacker. And he always said that he was a safety, and he had the athleticism at college to do that. Played pretty well. Wasn't perfect, but paired with another player, I believe, in the same class, really did play decently well in that secondary. But yeah, he's a linebacker. He's a weak side backer. He needs to, be at that second level. Excuse me. And he's growing into that. Was drafted in the 7th round by the Tennessee Titans as a linebacker and is playing in the NFL as a linebacker. But in the same vein as Leonard Taylor, it was a win to get him, but it was a little underwhelming, the performance that he actually had here at Miami. And he made some plays and, did some good things, but yeah, man, you want those 2 dudes to have been transformational for the defense, and they were simply rotation players, which is fine, but I need my 3 stars to develop into rotation players, and I need my 5 stars to be world destroyers, and they simply didn't destroy enough worlds for me. Jay Garcia, the wonderful world of Jake Garcia, transferred all over the place in high school, ends up at Loganville Grayson, but y'all know the story about, the COVID year in California, and then transfers to Valdosta or Colquitt County with Rush Probst and was ruled ineligible, and then moves to Grayson, and then they're like, cool, nope, you're eligible, you can play now. I don't know, whatever. This is a kid who had a lot of talent, incredible arm talent. My guy Marsh, former State of the U contributor, famously dove into the pool at his family home here in Hollywood that I've been to when Jake Garcia committed to Miami. It just never worked out. And I say again, because it was true, Jake Garcia was in front of Tyler Van Dyke as a true freshman. And it was Van Dyke's redshirt freshman year. But he was in front of Van Dyke, was the first one off the bench behind De'Eric King against Central Connecticut. And then unfortunately broke his ankle. And then, nothing was the same. And he's bounced around, Mizzou, East Carolina. He might even be somewhere else now. But yeah, you get one game and a broken ankle and a transfer out for a player who was ranked way higher than this, and you thought was going to be your quarterback of the future. Again, it's the same old story. It was a win to get him, but he did nothing here, so it ends up being a loss. But yeah, very underwhelming career it's in sum total, but especially in Miami for Jake Garcia. Elijah Arroyo, this is a dub. Big dubs in the chat. Yeah, this is one of those ones from Frisco, Texas. He's a native South Floridian, and his family moved out there and everything. This is a guy who was everything that we thought he was going to be. It took a couple years battling through injury in 22 and 23, but I was super high on him as a recruit, watching his film, seeing what he could do. Finally healthy in 2024. I mean, he was starting tight end and a key foundational player on the number one offense in America, and we've already spoken about him on this stream and in other places. People are talking about him as a potential first-round draft pick. What more could you want from any player, especially, a four-star? But again, looking at the stats, 5 games and an injury in 2022, 6 games and an injury in 23. And finally the breakout, almost 600 yards at 17 yards a catch, 7 touchdowns, running almost 22 miles an hour, a speed during a play that was only exceeded by 6 players in the entirety of the National Football League last year. And those are small, fast guys whose specialty is that. And this is a kid who's 6'5", 251, verified from the Senior Bowl, running almost 22 miles an hour. Physical freak, finally doing all the things that you need him to do. Catching passes, blocking, whether he's inline, H-back, Y slot, X receiver. There were a couple of times that we walked him out and said, cool, one-on-one, try to guard that big dude out there, and you can't do it. Yeah, this is the biggest win of that recruiting class. Totally.
If I may push back a little bit, is the expectation and the hope of him continuing to surge on into his professional career, possibly putting a bit of a shine on a guy that just delivered his final season, 35 catches?
Again, and to Juan Manuel's point in the chat, he was underutilized. We had the number one offense in America, and there's one ball. Like, I get it that the numbers are not as eye-popping as you might think for someone being talked about in the rarefied air that he is as a draft prospect. But, where are you going to take these other plays away from? Are you going to take them away from a Sam Brown who averaged 19 a catch? Are you going to take them away from Isaiah Horton, who stepped into a huge starting role? Are you going to take them away from the all-time leading receiver, Xavier Restrepo? Are you going to take carries away from Damian Martinez, who didn't even get enough carries and had the highest expected points added per rush of any player in America last year? This was a situation of circumstance where Miami had so many weapons that, look, nobody's getting the big piece of chicken, right? We're going to take that, and it's going to have, instead of it being that big Church's chicken steroid breast, we're going to need to slice that up, and 2 and 3 people are going to eat off that one piece of chicken. I get it, but it's hard for me to expect or want him to have done more when all you're doing would be reallocating numbers from other players on, let me say it again, the singular best offense in the country. I don't know.
Well, you understand my point.
I get it.
It wasn't solely to that one season. It was that everything was in that one season as well.
I mean, he was. I forget
who
put
together a career.
Right. If I go back really quickly, so then, sorry, I got to scroll really quick. If I go to 2021, Miami's tight end was Will Mallory that year, right? After Brevin Jordan had gone to the NFL. With all due respect, a freshman Elijah Arroyo is not playing over Will Mallory. And our receivers, Charleston Rambo setting records, Mike Harley setting records, right? A freshman, Keyshawn Smith, shout out to that name, and Xavier Restrepo, shout out to that name. you're not going to get plays over those guys as freshmen, right? And then, unfortunately, injury after injury. I get that it was everything, but he was in position to have a bigger role in 22 and 23. But you have a small role as a freshman. You're going to step in for Will Mallory, or with Will Mallory as a sophomore, get injured. You are the starter as a junior, get injured, or that injury was lingering and everything. It ended up being the way that it worked out, but not because of a lack of ability. It was just a situation, circumstance.
Okay.
Romello Brinson, who famously used audio from this here show at his or in his video collage for his commitment ceremony for Miami Northwestern. Yeah, that one, it's a win to get him, but overall that's a L. He never really stepped up, and other guys in his same class at receiver surpassed him. Ends up transferring to SMU. He redshirted this past year and played in, I know it says 6, but he played in the ACC championship game and the college football playoff, which do not count against your redshirt number. So I just want to get that out of the way. So he's actually coming back in 25 for SMU. But, he did more work at SMU than he did at Miami. It be like that sometimes, and the fact that his numbers were so small at Miami precipitated him moving with the rest of the SMU Hurricanes over there to the north side of Dallas and whatnot. So, Brashard Smith, another SMU Hurricane. This is a guy who played running back his entire high school career. They went and reclassified him here. He was not a running back. He played his senior year at wide receiver because that's what Miami recruited him to play. But he was a gadget guy. He when we used him as a running back, he split the zone and he was gone, as a kick returner, very impactful. But yeah, never really grew into that wide receiver role. Transfers to SMU and says, I'm better than Jalen Knighton. And I mean, look at the numbers, guys. Like, he was a receiver and had fewer catches at Miami than he did as the starting running back in the SMU offense. Like, that's with 235 carries on top of that, like at 5'8" and a half, 190 pounds. I didn't think that he had the body to withstand almost 250 carries in the season, but proved me wrong, golly. But just look at the explosion there. He's going to get an opportunity to make somebody's NFL team. So a win to get him. Didn't necessarily do too much here, and then had a super duper breakout season in Dallas for SMU. And yeah, he was one of the Palmetto Five. So yeah, you had him and Leonard Taylor in that same class. Chase Smith is still on the roster. He's grown into an outside linebacker. He's like 6'3.5", 6'4", like 220, 30 pounds with these just long arms. He makes plays every once in a blue moon. He's a rotational guy. He's not going to be the starter or anything, but he plays on specials. He does rotate in on base defense. It took him a while to really get going, but he's a solid depth player here, and I think that that's fine for him. Michael McLaughlin was a tight end, and then he moves to tackle from Stoneman Douglas. He's since transferred out. That 4-star was on potential, and we didn't see any of it really here. Tyler Johnson, and that's Jaquan Johnson's younger brother at linebacker. I think that he got that rating. I mean, that rating was well earned, but he comes here because he was his brother's brother, and yeah, never really did anything there. Thad Franklin, big running back, really struggled to break the depth chart here. Transferred out, bounced around a little bit. He bounced down to like Louisiana Monroe and Bethune-Cookman and whatnot, which is fine, but wasn't really a 4-star impact guy when he was here at Miami. And as you look at the stats, yeah, like decent in 22. I mean, 50 carries and 5 touchdowns. But goes to Louisiana Monroe, barely plays. That's kind of where he is now. Or the level of his ability, I'll say. Cody Brown left real early. I don't even think that he played in Miami, but transferred to Illinois and had a real nice career. So a good eval and a good take, but the output of his career was pretty good. It was just somewhere else. But yeah, I would say he was definitely a better take than like a Thad Franklin, who, as Juan Manuel in the chat says, Thad likes the dinner on the table too much because he was chunky, which, I mean, hey, y'all see me in person. I can't really talk about that. So, hey, Leonard Seymour, big baby Seymour on the offensive line. He just didn't have the size, strength, or ability really to play here. His brother went to Florida State, and maybe he should have followed that wide receiver in the previous class to him. But yeah, he's just not really it. And he's transferred out. Ryan Rodriguez from Columbus. He actually started the opener at left guard over Matthew McCoy this past year. I think that he's more of a rotation guy. I think that he's like your 7th or 8th lineman more than a starter. I just think that his lack of height and arm length is really a detriment when, especially, you got Matthew McCoy, who's 6'6", 315 right there and playing that position. But a solid, player. I think he can be a decent depth piece here, but that's probably about it. As Paolo says, the next one, Jacoby, personal foul, George, your next guy. A technician as a wide receiver. This is a guy who just consistently made plays, but also just made the stupid play, bro. Like all the personal fouls, my God, man. Eventually you got to grow up, bro. Like you got to get control of your emotions. And I say that transparently and vulnerably, right? I went through anger management twice, anger management therapy when I was a child, right? Once when I was like 8 and again when I was like 14 or 15, because I have this big personality and these big emotions, and I would let my anger take over. So I'm not even talking about this from a disparate place. Like I have been through that kind of stuff, me, myself personally. I see it in others. That's why I've always talked about it with Jacoby George. In the last 2 years, 110 catches, we'll call that 1,600 yards and 16 touchdowns, and one rushing, so 17 touchdowns. Hello. Like, and again, when you're talking about having a Restrepo there, having an Arroyo there, having a Horton there, having a Brown there, having the running game that we've had, that's damn good. And he played in enough games every year where you couldn't even redshirt, right? So you step up every single year with more and more catches. You're doing more. I mean, okay, he had 4 fewer catches this last year, but whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, but you're on an upward trajectory. This is an incredible recruiting win from Plantation High School. Shout out to Kevin Beard, who previously went to Plantation High School when he was, a student and then came to the University of Miami. That it's a win to get Jacoby George, but like it could have been so much more. Jabari Ishmael, another SMU Hurricane, just wasn't able to put it all together here at Miami. His dad was is a long time strength and conditioning assistant and everything, but he earned that on the strength of his play. He was, I believe, like a 4-star at the time coming out of Columbus, and you see we've got multiple guys from Columbus in this class, but transferred elsewhere and had a better go of it there. Cam Kinchins, super duper duper win as a recruit. He was always underrated just because he's not the flashiest athlete. He's not going to just wow you with height and speed and physicality. But I mean, look at the numbers. Played in 12 games, all the games as a freshman, and then a sophomore. Missed a couple games as a junior. But I mean, he was a first-team All-American, as a sophomore, a true sophomore. You know what I mean? Like 3 years and now going to the NFL. This is a guy who sealed multiple games for the Rams with interceptions in the league, and everybody keeps talking about, well, he's only an okay athlete. He's only moderately sized. And it was a funny thing way back when. But y'all remember when they released that YouTube video behind the scenes in the recruiting room at Miami, and Paul Williams, the old DB's coach, and Mark D'Onofrio said, I know we're talking about guys and their size, but we just need guys who know how to play safety. I don't want to hear about the measurables. Do they know how to play safety? Cam Kinchins knows how to play safety, played it at an elite level, was a consensus first-team All-American as a true sophomore, left after 3 years and got drafted. What are we talking about? I mean, and actually, I know that I said that Arroyo was the biggest win of the class. Cam Kinchins, probably even a bigger win. Khalil Brantley from Miami Northwestern, undersized tight end, didn't really work out, transfers to SMU. We'll see what he does starting next year. Thomas Davis, undersized defensive end, linebacker guy, and everything, but never really worked out here. He's transferred elsewhere. Malik Curtis, one of the fastest players I have ever seen. I still think it was a disservice to that young gentleman to put him on defense as opposed to offense, but regardless of where he was, he didn't make nan play here at Miami. He's transferred out by Alan Hay. I believe I think he transferred out as well. But that's another guy who, he's like Ahmad Moten, where, he was a developmental defensive tackle, only he did not see the kind of development that Ahmad Moten has seen. So he transferred out. Deshaun Troutman, same kind of a thing. Athletic linebacker from Orlando, came down, played a year, and then transferred. Who's this?
Alan Hay. Temple.
Transferred to Temple. Okay, cool. And, had a better year in 23 than 24, but played in more games in 24. So I don't know if it's – but hey, cool. Sure. Fine. Yeah. Troutman, Juan Manuel says, yeah, Manny Diaz, special linebacker. Yeah, but he didn't amount to anything here. See ya. Nelson Foley, the punter from Australia, didn't really become anything because Dylan Joyce from Australia, our current punter in a couple of classes after him, has he never unseated Lou Headley, did Foley, but then also Dylan Joyce was better, so he kind of got squeezed by two compatriot Australians. And then the final player in the Borregales kicking dynasty, Andres Borregales, all-time career leading scorer at the University of Miami. Your kicker for 4 years. He sat and redshirted behind his brother when he was here, Jose, for the one season. And, played for 4 years and did very well. He's an all-time career leading scorer. He's lighting things up at the Shrine Bowl. He's at the Combine as one of only a handful of kickers to have gotten invited. There's nothing you can think other than, that's a really good get and a huge win, especially when you've seen the likes of Bubba Baxa and his 40% kicking rate, having been recruited to and signed at the University of Miami previously. So, that's another big win. So, in the end, if you're looking at the real big recruiting wins, apart from the 5 stars who I believe you need to win those battles, it would be Elijah Arroyo, Cam Kinchins, and Andres Borregales, and Jacoby George probably being the top 4 players from that class. But, it was an interesting group, but also the lack of quality as the class went on also pointed to why Miami decided to bring in Mario Cristobal, because, the bottom half of that class didn't have the range.
Do you recall being excited or underwhelmed when that class was signed?
Both. You're excited because we won some of those battles that we had routinely lost, for a Leonard Taylor, for a James Williams, a Jake Garcia, even, at the top. So you're thinking, okay, like if these guys hit, you got Brashard Smith, also from the Palmetto 5, you're doing some of those things. You're thinking you're going to be okay. But also, you miss out on Jason Marshall, the real star of that class, from a physical standpoint, from Palmetto, who went to Florida. And geez, if I were just to click over and see what I'm not saying that everybody was going to come here, which is, not what I was doing before. But if I'm just looking, and if you load page at the official visits from 21, they're not in here. Boo. Can I see the prospects? Okay, if I just see some of the offers outside of the players who signed, oh, they've already called the list on the 247, so I have to go into the offers, and there's too many. But even if I do that, just a quick perusal of some of the players that we offered that we didn't get, that like maybe we had a chance with. I wrote about Jalen Milroe as an option for Miami at quarterback. I knew that he probably wasn't going to come here, but that's one. Preston Stone didn't work out. Running back, thought we were okay. Ja'Cory Brooks, the 5-star, from Booker T, who went to IMG, ended up going to Alabama. That's one where you really wanted to win that, so that's one that kind of gets you. Mario Williams from Plant City, Christian Leary, Malik Neighbors. Oh, I wanted him real bad in that recruiting class. And I believe he took a visit. The Marcus Burke kid from Trinity Christian. Those are just some of the receivers that we offered that we did not end up getting. On the offensive line, there were a couple, but none that were really seriously linked with my Marcus Tate. Yeah, from U School. He ended up at True Academy, went to Clemson. That was one that kind of ground my gears. And there were some. So I mean, there were enough misses in that class at the top of the list again that it was great to be involved in those battles, and we won 3 of them, but we lost way more. So yeah, there was a measure of excitement, but also a little bit of a lukewarm trepidation because it could have been better at the time, I thought. And then if you're looking at, and like if you guys go back, man, even on my Twitter, I was talking about Malik Neighbors at the end of his junior year before even LSU was really on him. I wanted Malik Neighbors so bad. Oh my goodness, I wanted Malik Neighbors in that class. But I understand prioritizing Ja'Cory Brooks over Malik Neighbors because he's from the crib and Malik Neighbors is from a crib, but not the crib. But then you lose out on both. And, so kind of that.
Absolutely, everyone. Appreciate you being here. One more from Falconer TRX. Miami gets called for personal fouls from 25 years ago.
Yeah, they do. But what are you going to do? Everybody wants to hate us. They don't call it. Usually officials don't call it both ways. But also, when you're Jacoby George, right? You got to know that you're wearing orange and green and white, my boy. You got to know that they're looking at you, and you got to know if you're on offense, they're looking at, or not even on offense, but you got to know that they're looking at the second actor, and you got to know if you swipe at somebody's helmet or if you headbutt them under the chin right in front of the center judge, they're gonna call that, which is a frustrating thing because, but it is what it is.
I will scold myself partially because I am directing our host to let everyone know, and there is a script provided that we are taking sponsorships here at the Voice of College Football, and so we can partner with you. So I will simply cut to the chase and say sponsorships at vocfb.com. And just don't think, hey, you have to have some kind of large company. Personal brands, any kind of products, services, anything involved that you would like to partner with us. We have a good track record of a lot of those companies that have sponsored with us giving us feedback to say, hey, our social media posts, our engagement, all these other things, sales and so forth went up. So sponsorships at vocfb.com.
Yeah, man. So be sure that you guys do that. While you're here, before you go, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because I will be doing even more videos, whether it's just me or whether I'm bringing on somebody else. You'll never know unless you subscribe and like, because then you're going to see that stuff. So do that. And also, as it says on the screen below, please follow me on Twitter at Underwood Sports, and always come and fan with us over at stateoftheu.com, 24/7, 365, the best in leaders in Miami Hurricanes commentary and analysis. There's plenty of stuff up there from this week: combine preview, spring preview on offense, defense goes up tomorrow, Monday musings, that and so much more over at stateoftheu.com for the low, low price of free 99. So please come on over and fan with us. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope that you enjoyed and engaged with the other content that I am dreaming up to create. And Mark and I will see you next week. See ya.